Now let's try to solve the problem with the help of containerization. The thing is, if we talk about virtualization, what we have talked about is we have a hardware, on top of that we have a host OS, then we have a hypervisor, which is your virtual machine software, and then on top of that you have a guest OS. And on this guest OS, basically you have your application requirements, like say you have web server, databases, your compilers, everything installed on this OS. And then when you want to give this to someone else, you don't give the software, you give the entire guest OS image. Okay. Now, to solve this problem, because when you say the entire guest OS, it's heavy, right, to run it. Now, this additional problem with the guest OS is, what if you have multiple apps to run? So you have to install multiple guest OS, right? So on the hypervisor, you're not running one guest OS, but multiple. And don't you think there are multiple guest OS, which will be very heavy, let's say 5 to 6 guest OS for 5 to 6 applications. Now, to solve this problem, we can use containers. Now, if you talk about the shipping industry, again, I'm not an expert in shipping industry, but let's say if you want to move some things from one location to other location through a sea route. Now, of course, you can just take this item, pack it in a box, and then send it to other place. Again, in the ship, when you want to carry it, you want to ship it. I know it's a very complex English here, which is shipping the ships. But the point is, when you want to again ship it on the ship, you have to box it again so that it will be waterproof, so that no water will get in, and then you will ship it to the other port, the destination port, and then from there on the trucks you will load it again and then you will ship it. The easier way would be, what if you can use containers? Now, you have seen these containers a lot, right? So in fact, in one of my first project in a company, the client was a shipping company, so I don't want to name it, but so what they do is, from the source location, when they want to pack things, they directly put the things inside a container. So let's say they have 10 boxes, all these 10 boxes goes inside a container. Now this exact container, the entire container, goes on a truck, reaches to the source port, and then from this port, they will load it to the ship, and then they will dock it to the ship, and then from there, the ship will carry the same container. Okay, there's no unboxing and boxing happening here. The same container goes to the destination port, and then from there, the same container goes on, so it will undock, and then it will go to the truck, and this truck goes to the destination. Now, in the entire process, the things are moving inside a container. That is much easier, right? Now that's where this concept of containers came into picture. Now, can we do that in software? Now think about this. What if in the virtualization itself, or maybe let's remove virtualization, you have your hardware, physical hardware, and then you have your host OS. On top of it, you don't have to install any virtual machine, but let's say you use some containerization softwares. Now we have an option of like Docker, Podman, so there are multiple options. So what you do is you install this software, let's say Docker. Docker is powerful enough to run the container, not one container, but multiple containers. So instead of running your software on the OS, you are running your software inside the container. Now, from the developer's perspective, when you are building a project, you will not be building a project directly on your OS. You will make sure that your app is running on the containerization software, maybe let's say Docker. Now in this container, which you're creating on your machine, you have everything. You have your compiler, web server, database connections or database software, everything in this container. Now when you want to give this project to your testing team, you will not give the project. What you will give is the container itself. So this container goes from here, goes to your testing team, and then from there it goes to the production. You're not giving the project, you're giving the containers. And the beauty is, now since you are doing this on Docker, the same container will go from your machine to testing team or tester's machine, and even they will have a Docker. Of course, they have to install Docker, and then you can run it. Now, installing Docker is not a tedious process. You just have to install one software, and then the exact container, the way it is working in your machine will work on their machine in the same way. It same goes for the production server and also cloud, because most of the cloud applications supports Docker or cloud services. So basically what I'm saying is, when you build a software, build it in the container, the same container goes on there, and then from there, and then it works everywhere. Now, what are the advantages? First of all, containers is the isolation part. So if you run one application on one container, it will not interact with the other containers. Okay, so you have different containers running on the same OS. Now the advantage is you only have one OS. So the load on your machine will be less. Additionally, when you talk about virtualization, you have OS there, right? Starting an OS takes time. So let's say you are giving this OS Ubuntu image to your testing team. When they run Ubuntu from this image, it will take time. But what about containers? They are very fast to run because you're not running the entire OS, you're just running a container. And that's the benefit you get there. And by doing this, we are also making sure that you have safety. which is security. Also, what about portability? Now, since we are creating containers, it is much more portable, just like shipping industry. So you can basically port this container from one machine to other machine easily. What about scalability? Since you can run one container on one machine, you can run the same container in multiple instances if you want to scale it. And by doing this, we are also achieving consistency, which means if it works in your machine, the same way it will work on other machines as well. And that's the beauty of containerization. So basically, if you want to understand containerization, what it means simply creating a package of your software with all the configuration in a container and ship it to the other teams, other machines. Now, question arises, how will you implement containers? That will be done with the help of Docker. So of course, there are multiple applications or multiple softwares which can do this. But Docker is very famous. So we're going to talk about that in this course, and also the course name itself is Docker. So let's talk about that in the next video.